Welcome to the Higgs Studio.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
It's a pleasure and it's an honor for us to have you and sharing all of your knowledge and wisdom with all of years of working experience to us.
It's always good for me to come and open up my mind too. I love the papers that get presented and, a lot of interesting research that's happening.
I know that we only have a few minutes on the in studio, but I would like to ask you a couple of questions that I think our students and our audience might be interested in. The very first question is basically, as a high-profile, very successful, high-caliber venture capitalist investor, what kind of projects are you interested in nowadays?
So, our philosophy at Alsop Louie is to look for technologies that are highly disruptive in nature, that they actually can move the needle in either how enterprises run their information systems, how people consume, how people learn, how new technology can enable brand new capabilities. So even though many of these technology areas could be deemed risky, we think the role of venture capital is to fund the risky projects, but those risky projects, if successful, have to have high impact, right? So we're less interested in iterative technologies or, another iteration of somebody else's success. We're looking for some brand new, bold thinking.
So more practically, say if you have on your desk 500 projects submitting to you, how do you sort them out? Which one catches your attention right away?
Well, we immediately sort from what we call the boring ideas from the more outrageous ideas. It turns out in venture capital that the more outrageous the idea, the higher the yield if the idea is successful. So what we always do is what we call a projection of the future. And we say, we look at a piece of technology, a new business plan, and we ask ourselves, if we did not invest in this particular company, would this happen? If the answer is yes, then we probably won't invest in it. Why? Because everybody's running to do the same thing in a crowded market space. We love the company or the entrepreneur who comes up with an idea who doesn't say the way the world is going to be, but where the world should be.
Okay.
And the bigger the gap between where the world should be versus where everybody thinks it's going to be, that's the definition of impact. And that's the kind of company and entrepreneur that we want to fund. So we want that impactful, big, bold idea that might be outrageous when we first hear it, but actually can move that needle.
Okay. On the way to the studio here, we got intercepted by a female faculty member trying to ask you what you think about her idea, her product idea. So what was happening in your mind when you talk to a person approaching you?
So the first thing is it's great to have folks from academia actually be willing to take the risk of putting out one of their research or ideas and converting from research into a product, right? The percentage of people who actually do that are fairly small.
So my understanding from all of those entrepreneurship courses is that the personality of the entrepreneur is actually very important. And so far we already discussed about what areas to invest in. So what kind of personality trait that you are looking for or you feel comfortable with?
Well, it's not that different than being a U.S. Navy SEAL, right? So if you go to SEAL school, they have lots of strapping, big, strong, individuals wanting to be SEALs. And they go through then a process to kind of weed them out. And it turns out the factors, the traits that determine success of a SEAL is very similar to the traits that determine the success of entrepreneurs. Let's kind of review some of these traits. The first one is resilience, right? All through the journey, there are multiple points of what we call tactical or challenges or tactical failures, right? It isn't that you can go from point A to point B without being challenged. The issue is when you're challenged, do you have the will to continue? Without that will to continue, you cannot be successful as an entrepreneur. Because when you start down the path to do a startup, to pursue a big idea, it's a path steeped in fog, right? You can only see so far ahead as you begin the journey. You have to have in your own mind and in your own heart of hearts the desire to see that idea through to completion regardless of the challenge and the sacrifice that's necessary to get there. Right? If you don't have those traits, you cannot be successful. The second thing you have to do is you have to have the skill, which is different than the will, to break complex problems down to smaller, easier, conquerable problems that you can knock off one step at a time, right? Great entrepreneurs can do that. They can break down big problems, look down at their feet and figure out what I need to do for my next step and not be overwhelmed by the challenges in front of them. They just knock off one challenge at a time, right? So we look for entrepreneurs who are like that. The third thing that we look for entrepreneurs is the ability to communicate, because you have to be able to communicate to get a group of believers,
Right.
to enlist a group of people around you to take your idea and make it even a better idea than what you have. And those people are called your employees and your partners and your founders, right? Without that skill set, without that social skill set of being able to convey an idea that's so powerful that everybody else is willing to give up their idea to pursue your idea, you cannot be successful as an entrepreneur.
Okay, thank you. So, given the fact that you are confronting with new ideas using technology to push society forward, how do you see life of a human being 10 years and 20 years down the road being supported or controlled by technology?
Well, I think all around us today we see technology. I mean, we have technology in our pockets, we have technology in our wrists, we have technology in our cars. It's pretty hard to live in a world without technology. But technology today has very limited capacities. The things that we've done very well on the internet is we have networked people, we networked with machines so we can share information more quickly, we can compute against that information. We have rudimentary sensors that we can hook up and make it in an automated fashion. I think in the next 10 or 20 years, we're going to see a dramatic shift from being in the information age, from being really in the technology age, where technology, right, is augmenting human existence, from everything from how we think to what we think about, to what we do, to affecting the environments around us, be driven by technologies of which computer sciences is going to be the foundation in our ability to make those machines intelligent, to make those machines resilient, to make those machines be able to actually serve the needs of humans.
Thank you. There is quite a bit of talk about the dark side of technology. And I know that you are very sensible about ethics and technology. Could you share some of your thoughts in this area?
Well, I think that the creation of technology for the sake of creating technology without the fundamental understandings of how that technology can affect us in society or how it affects us as individuals is a fool's errand. I think you need to be able to support both. And I think technologists have a responsibility to look at the social implications of the technologies that they're creating and consider it in the implementation of those technologies, and then how we educate, whether it be our government, regulators, educators, and the general population on safe and effective uses of those technology are all part of the role of being a great technologist. I know it's hard because sometimes it's not the shiny thing to go after, But if you look at all the successful technologies in recent history, they've had, well, they had some negative use. There was a clear understanding of what that technology could be used in a positive way and what its limitations should be to avoid the dark side of the uses of those technologies.
Obviously, the role of the universities is to produce researchers into the market, into society. From your perspective, what would be the hottest research ideas or topics that doctoral students in the MIS field or in the computer science field should be looking into?
I think the cognitive sciences, everything from artificial intelligence to systems that help and improve decision-making capabilities, that's a hot area of research, right? Because now we have the computation power. We have the data. We have the networks, right? How do we take that? And now we're in short period, we're going to be putting sensors everywhere. We're going to have 50 billion devices on the internet by 2020. So given that wiring and that capability, the ability to add intelligence, right? To have machines actually aid in our ability to make decisions, even how to operate systems autonomously, is going to be a really exciting area, not just for research, but also in building brand new products and services that, were just science fiction a few years ago.
There has been, about 20 years ago, when the technology of internet started to make huge impact, people was talking about a global economy connected through the technology. And now there are also some evidence that technology is actually becoming a dividing factor. So any comment on that?
Well, it cuts both ways, So I think the internet's done a lot to put a foundation where people can share ideas across country boundaries. If you look at, on the political front, the Arab Spring, right, was the ability for not just using technology to organize those local populations and to communicate, but to generate world opinion, which is very, very powerful. E-commerce, the digital commerce, didn't exist 20 years ago and now is driving commerce on a global scale. And so I think that has shown the positiveness of the internet. On the other challenge, though, is the internet has created an area where any idea, regardless of how good or bad it is, can find individuals who share those ideas and create these kind of alternative viewpoints and alternative realities that may be counter to the benefits of society. Terrorism, other ideologies that are kind of floating around you can use the internet very effectively to communicate those kinds of ideas as well. I also worry about how the internet can be balkanized by nation states. I think the danger is that a lot of nation states, including the U.S., could feel an incentive to control or wall off parts of the internet from their population. And I think that would be a very bad thing for society, right, to allow this balkanization of the internet to take place.
One particular area is about cybersecurity. Do we have any hope in dealing with this situation in the future, or is it something that is hopeless?
Well, cybersecurity, like any form of warfare or activities, there's no absolute, right? I mean, there is no end game. It is a state that's constantly evolving. New offensive techniques will show up on the internet to break in, to steal, to wreak havoc, to do denial of service attacks, and there'll be counter defensive technologies to counter that. So I don't think that's going away in the near future. But what I do see is responsible governments, responsible organizations, responsible companies should be able to work out a standard of behavior that says these kinds of activities, right, is not responsible in the net. And there needs to be a global monitoring of the net to protect bad behavior from affecting large portions of the population. Just like we had back in the oceans in the 18 and 1900s, and we created, all the rules around the sea lanes and what was the rules of the sea. We need a similar model for the cyberspace in which we live in today.